Hey guys, Delaney here. Do you have lambs dropping in the next few months and have no idea what to buy or prep for? Don't worry, I got you, boo. Today we're going to go over our personal checklist for prepping for lambs and help you guys prepare for when those lambs start dropping. Before we get into the specifics of what you'll need, I wanted to establish one thing first. And now this is my opinion. Not everyone shares this feeling, but I think some of my farmer friends would agree that lambing is the absolute worst time of the year. There are definitely highs holding those little lambs, especially those little miracle babies that pull through when you really don't think they're gonna make it. But there are some deep, dark lows too. If you have some veteran ewes, usually your year goes a little bit smoother. When you have new mamas, they really don't know what they're doing, so they need a lot more hand holding and kind of helping along. But if you have livestock, you will inevitably end up with dead stock and complications. We shepherds play it off as, oh, isn't this cute? Aren't our little lambs just the most adorable thing on earth? Isn't springtime just the best time because of all the babies that we're having on our farm? And we post all that stuff on our social media accounts. And a lot of that has to do with marketing. We do want to put our best foot forward. We do want to make people interested in our farm and wanting to know our story and our life and our animals. No one really wants to know the absolute horror show that happens on every farm during spring when we are having babies. So we frolic in the sun and we gather flowers and we make it look so beautiful. But I am going to tell you the truth. It is the worst. The worst. Now I know what some of you are thinking, but Delaney, aren't these animals, can't they do what they do naturally? I mean, they breed naturally. Can't they just have their babies without any interference and in the most natural way possible? What kind of prep do you really need to do? Won't nature take its course and these cute little sheepies will have their lambs naturally with no interference and no help? Animals should be able to have their babies on their own. And as my southern friends would say, oh, bless your heart. That was my mindset the first year that we had lambs, was how much prep do I really need to do? How much do I really need to be monitoring them? Hiya, city kid who didn't know what she was doing. I think I got a lot of, oh, bless your heart, from a bunch of my farmer friends. The answer to those questions is no. These sheep do not have babies all by themselves, all on their own. Some breeds, like sheep that are bred for meat, are bred for easy labors, but there's absolutely no guarantees that they're going to have smooth labors. Before we even get into the labor portion of lambing, which is a video that will come out a little bit later, we are going to deep dive into what sort of supplies that you might need prior to lambing, during lambing, and after lambing to make your season go a little bit more smoothly. Supplies to have on hand that reduces mortality and makes it a little bit easier on our ewes, and let's be honest, us. For you newbies out there, lambing is the term we use when our ewes, which is our mama sheeps, go into labor. Prep really should be done about a month or two before our ewes' due date. It's a pretty extensive list, so that's why I decided to do a video where we walk through what our personal checklist is to help you new guys kind of figure out what it is you really need. Along with helping walk you all through our prepping list and our supplies, I'm also going to walk through some cheaper options on how to get some of these supplies and even some ways that you can get some stuff for free. That'll be on part 2, so keep an eye out for that video and subscribe and hit that bell to make sure that you get the notification for when part 2 comes out. This video, I realize, is going to be a bit long, so it's going to be a 2-parter, maybe even 3-parter, depending on how long it takes for me to explain some of the supplies, how to get them, as well as bring you guys along as I sort through the supplies we have and show you what my process is for making sure that I have everything covered and I get my checklist checked off. One of the things I've noticed when I go online and I try to find lambing lists is that some lists are really good, some are not. I like to pick and choose some of the supplies and items that we really need, because I think a lot of people put everything on there, and to be honest, some things we don't need, some things we don't do based off of how we manage our farm. And I just realized that I couldn't just print out someone's list because a lot of the stuff on there I didn't actually need. I created a lambing checklist template that I personally will be using this year, and I'm putting the link down in the description box below in case you want to use it as well. It's a little girly. Okay, a lot girly. But this is kind of a hard season for me, and I wanted to make a template that made me smile and that brought me joy when I saw it. There's a lot that needs to be done that is not fun and is hard, and I just wanted to make something for myself that would make me feel like I was looking forward to some of these to-do lists. I also find on farms that a lot of the things that people use are very masculine and kind of straight lace, black and white. And I wanted to make something that was more for my farm hers out there who, want to embrace the fact that they're women farmers, that they just didn't want the black and white stuff. They wanted something fun and pink and pretty and, celebrating us as we're out there in the muck and the mud. I have a few different styles you can choose from. My personal favorite is this one right here, mostly because of this cute little girl right in the corner with the flowers. It just makes me smile every time I look at her. My second favorite is the sort of pep talk one, the one where you can kind of look at the bottom and kind of get renewed and you can do it attitude. Because I know when you go through a lot of this stuff, it feels overwhelming and you look at the prices and it feels like, oh my gosh, can we do this? I don't understand. And I wanted to give you all a template that just cheered you on and made you guys look toward the lambing season as a you can do this instead of feeling super overwhelmed. And last but not least is our more simple template. Mostly I made this one for the people who wanted it just straight-laced, who maybe didn't really care for all the floofy girly stuff. I definitely wanted to make sure that you guys had a template for yourselves, something that you can print in grayscale or black and white just because you just needed something to help you to get through your list, and this one is kind of perfect for that. Ink is really expensive, so I totally get it if you need to go black and white. I just needed something bright and pretty and colorful to make me smile every time I had to do some of my to-do lists and my prep. I like to mark on each page a different group of supplies that I need. Stuff I have, stuff that I need, and that's an N-E-E-D capitalized. Things that I absolutely can't go through the season without. And stuff that I want or stuff that I would really like to have, but they're not absolutely necessary. This stuff is not cheap, you guys, and it'll all add up very quickly. Please do not go into debt for this. Often you just gotta do what you gotta do. Start your lists with the must-haves and then build on from there. I'm going to share what I feel are items that are necessary and items that we chose to purchase ourselves. But keep in mind, this is our third year, so a lot of the stuff we have was from the first 3 years. We didn't get them all in the same year. We've kind of added things as the years went by. We'd faced issues and problems and go, you know what, we kind of need that. I didn't do that for last year, and I realized that for my own personal sanity, I wanted to have that on hand as sort of a backup in case something went wrong. And again, this is sort of a personal choice, whether you want to go all in and buy a lot of the stuff or you want to really be budget friendly and go, you know what, let's just buy the stuff that is kind of our bare minimum, and then see at the end of purchases if we can maybe slide in maybe 1 or 2 other items. You all do what is best for your farm, for your family, for your budget, and take my advice and some of the things I say with a grain of salt, and also with your own understanding of what can you handle, how many sheep you have, what type of barn do you have, because a lot of that stuff will adjust kind of some of the needs as well. Our halves list this year is going to be a lot longer than our other two lists, primarily because we're going into our third milking season. A lot of what we need, we already have. Our next list is going to be the need to get, and like I said, those are like capital NEED, but for us, it's not buying from scratch. Usually it's a refill if we're getting low. And it's really important to remember to reorder some of these things ahead of time, because in the middle of lambing, a lot of those supplies are not in stores, or even if they're online, it takes a lot longer to get here. So this is another reason why we do this so early, is so that if there's any supplies that we absolutely know we need, we are able to stock up ahead of time and not have to scramble in day of to figure out what to do, because none of the stores have it. And then our short list is going to be nice to haves. Maybe at the end of the budget, we'll see where it is. A lot of these are just more of, well, I know some people have this and it might be worth trying, or even just researching a little bit further to see if it's something that we want to get eventually. All right, so we are going to just jump right in and go through our list of halves. Now, one of the most important things for lambing that is kind of a must is lubricant. Starting it off strong here, guys. It's a giant bottle of lube, and I believe we've only used about half of it, so I think we'll be fine going through this season. A must-have. It just makes it easier if you have to go in and help a lamb out, or if the lamb gets stuck and you need to just kind of make it a little bit more slippery for the little guy to come out. Another one is a thermometer. Now, I had a baby thermometer that I was using for my kids, and then we got a better one, so we ended up taking our old thermometer and just shoving it out with the animals. And thermometer is just really good to make sure that a mama, when she recovers or even beforehand, doesn't get sick. Temperature for sheep is a really good indicator that they're not doing well, so having a really good thermometer that you can shove up their rear and get their numbers is really good to have on hand. And it also helps with lambs when they come out, if they are frozen, if they are going through hyperthermia, to make sure that their temperature is high enough to be able to give them some medicine, because some medicine you can't give if their temperature is too low. This is one that you don't absolutely have to have, but I put it on our halves list because we just have it, is a scale. We have a metal scale that has a hook that has a plastic hanger, and we use that for our lambs when they've come out. It's just a good idea to be able to weigh your lambs to make sure that they're putting on weight. If around 3 or 4 days you realize they're not putting on weight, then they're not getting enough milk from mom and you may need to step in. The other one is bottles and nipples. Now, a lot of people would prefer not to have bottle babies. We are a dairy, so bottle babies is not the worst because we're able to start milking mom sooner, but we still want to make sure that we have the bottles and the nipples on hand for any babies who we have to pull off. We are not sure if this year we are fully taking off all the babies or if we're leaving some on. It will kind of depend. We had a lot of baby boys last year, and for boys it's better to keep them on, but for girls it's better to pull off and have bottle babies because they're easier to handle. So that is kind of why we just generally bought bottles and nipples the very first year, because we just weren't sure if we were going to pull the babies or keep them on mom. Another one is a really old blanket or an old towel. The babies, when they come out, are really wet, and if mom doesn't do a really good job cleaning them, you need to kind of go in and start drying them off, especially if you're lambing in a very cold area. We are lambing earlier in the year than we normally do, so it's going to be about end of February, which can be freezing temperatures here in Tennessee. And so we want to make sure that we have enough towels that we can dry the baby off if mom's not doing it properly or if she is not doing it quickly enough. Same reason for the hair dryer. The hair dryer is something that you can plug in. We have electricity running out to the barn. So, or you can pull the baby into the house. But just having a hair dryer, if that baby is hypothermic, if the baby is too cold and frozen, a lot of times you'll need to warm that baby up again to give medicine or just to have it thrive. And so a hair dryer is really nice to be able to just blow on them as, far away and as safely as possible, but just another avenue to warm them up if they're too cold. And that goes with the box or a bin, like a storage bin, something you can put the lambs in to kind of wrap them up in the blanket and warm them up, sort of like an egg incubator where you kind of keep them in a more enclosed space and then you kind of put heat on it and it kind of warms up their body fully versus, trying to hit one or two areas. And then a bulb syringe, which I can show you right now because I have it on my table, is one of these. This is really good. I think we got it from the hospital for my babies. It's really good to kind of pull out snot from their nose. But this one's really good to kind of pull out that gunk from the lamb's nose as well. Some people will just use a straw. They'll kind of stick a straw up the lamb's nose to make it sneeze and kind of get all that gunk out. So either one works, but because we have it, I think we have 2 or 3 kicking around, I like to make sure we have one on hand in case the straw is just not strong enough. 7% iodine solution, that is something that you put on the umbilical cord to keep it from getting infected and to help it kind of dry out and kind of fall off quicker. Colostrum powder, this is different than milk replacer, so keep that in mind. This is extremely important, especially if you end up having a ewe that dies. Like your first ewe doesn't make it, then you end up with a few lambs that have no colostrum, no milk, and you're just out of luck. And for lambs, it's super important to have that colostrum in the first few days. So that is something you definitely want on hand just in case. And it doesn't cost very much, and it's powdered milk, so I think it has an expiration date, but you can probably use it for a few years. So we always like to have that on hand just in case the first mom who lambs doesn't make it, and then we don't have any colostrum that we can take from another ewe because she hasn't lambed yet, and we just need to get that nutrients into that baby, and we can't afford to just run to the store and have it not be there. A feeding tube, that kind of goes with a sick lamb who's just doesn't have a sucking reflex or is really struggling to latch on to mom. Sometimes it's just important to get that colostrum down them. So we haven't had to do this yet. When we did have one of our lambs tubed, it was an emergency vet visit, and so we had the vet do it because I wasn't comfortable because I'd never done it before. And she was able to kind of get the colostrum and definitely make sure that it had it, to make sure that it was strong and was up and moving and having been fed. And so a feeding tube is really important to have. Some of this stuff, this following stuff, is stuff I know we have, and so I'm sorting through them, but we don't necessarily need it for lambing. And one of them is banding tools, either bands or the actual implementation. This goes with docking or castrating if that's what you were planning to do. You need to make sure you do that within a week. So if that's something that you're planning to do, whether it's docking or castrating, you want to make sure you have that on hand. A lot of people, if they don't handle their sheep often, like they're not milkers, a lot of times they'll like to do it within the first few days just because it's harder to catch them. And so while they have them, they just are like, we're just going to do everything now. But it's banding for the, like I said, the tails and the castration. Tags. Some people want to just do tags right away just to make sure that it's there and they have a number. We don't have enough animals on our farm to make me confused as to who is who. Our lambings are usually scattered. So even if we have 2 lambs that are boys, if they're not born at the same time, you can kind of tell the difference from size, and they spend time with mom. So we have tags, but it's not super important for us to tag them right away because I'm pretty good about knowing who is who. And then here we go into some vitamins that we want to have on hand. One is vitamin A and D. This one is really good for moms if they're having some blood clots. A really good boost for any of the sheep that are kind of listless or just kind of, not doing well. E-selenium, we've never had to do this. We haven't had this problem for, but a lot of people will use it. Some areas in the United States, especially, I think a lot of them actually, but our area specifically is selenium deficient. So if we think that any of our sheep are moving slow or maybe are deficient in something, we like to just give them some of that selenium. It usually comes in a paste just to help them thrive and to recover from the labor. One of the ones that I will say is an absolute must from most of my farmer friends. This is one of those things where they always mention whenever your sheep is not doing well, and that's vitamin B complex. I have used that on so many different sheep for so many different problems. A lot of that is just helping them get a big boost of a bunch of different vitamins all at once. And so that is an absolute must. If you don't have anything else, that is one that I'm like, you need to have that. Because if you are in the bad situation of not having anything, vitamin B complex is just one of those go-to ones that are just really nice to have on hand. Another one to have on hand is either a phone or a notepad. This is to make sure you make notes of any of the sheep or anything that's happened or any medicines that you've given them and what date. This is just nice to have on hand as sort of a record keeping, something that's really easy. I usually just do it on my phone, but some people want to do a notebook and have it more solid in case something were to happen with their phone. A prolapse retainer and a harness. We haven't had to deal with prolapse, but last year we had a maybe this could turn into one, and so I went and purchased one last year just because I was a little nervous. But we have it, so I want to make sure that it's within reach if we need it for this year. Another one is a big bag of sugar. Prolapse, we'll talk about prolapse a little bit, or you can look it up. It's not fun. But a lot of times, one of the good things you could do to help shrink up the prolapse is sugar, which is sort of, I don't know if it's random or I just don't understand the science behind it, but it's just a really nice way to kind of make the swollen redness kind of decrease enough to be able to do the next few steps that you need to do. An oral syringe, so that's one of those syringes that you stick down their throats. A lot of sheep will not take pills or like stuff and feed, and so you really need to pin them down and shove the medicine in their throat. So if they're not doing well, again, before, during, or after labor, it's really nice to have that on hand to shoot up, whatever it is you need to give them, and you make sure that they get it. And to do that, you need to kind of, syringe it down their throat. A lamb puller. We did not have this last year, and man, I regretted it. We had a baby who was stuck, and it was an emergency vet visit. Even if we had the puller, I don't know if we would have been able to save that lamb, but I was trying to get in there and tie the leg of one of the lambs so I could pull it a little harder and try to get it out, and we had to use like a shoestring. Like literally I took the string off my shoe to try to hook that lamb and pull it out. And I was just like, no, that was a trauma that I don't want to do again. So we went ahead and we bought a lamb puller last year. So want to make sure that's within reach. Another one is rope. You definitely want some rope. This could again be for something like pulling a sheep out if you don't have a lamb puller, but some people will use a rope to tie down a ewe if she's being either aggressive and you can't get to the lambs to give them what they need, or the mom won't let the lamb on her to eat, and you're trying to kind of get that baby and the mom to bond. A lot of times farmers will kind of pin or tie their legs up and stuff and just make sure that they can't move so that they can get in and do what farmers need to do to make sure that the animals thrive. We personally have harnesses. A lot of our sheep are halter trained, and so we use a lot of that. Last year we had a mom who wouldn't let a baby on her, and I put a halter on her and I kind of pinned her to the wall, or I tied her up to the wall, and then I used my body and I pinned her against I hooked her onto the wall and then I pinned her against the wall, and then I shoved the baby up under her to make sure that he was eating. It ended up not being worth it, and we ended up pulling the lamb and having it be a bottle baby, but that is an option, and that's why having rope around is helpful. Scissors. Scissors is a good one. You never know if there is something that is caught, or a bag that you can't open because you didn't open it before, and oh my gosh, it's not opening. A lot of times people suggest using scissors with a very colorful handle, so if they fall into the hay or the dirt or the grass, that you're very easily able to find it. We have scissors out in the barn to help us with cutting the string off of the hay and the straw, so we always have one out there. Another one is kelp, minerals, or loose molasses. These are all kind of things that you can look into and see if you want to have on farm. Minerals is something sheep should have anyway. Kelp is sort of an additional mineral boost, and it's supposed to be really, really good for sheep. So we like to give it pre and post lambing, and maybe even throughout the year. We're kind of opening up ideas on just leaving it available all year round. Loose molasses is really good for animals. It just gives them a real nice boost of energy to get them moving and maybe up. Like before their meds kick in, it's really nice to kind of give them some of that so that they kind of wake up and, don't just kind of fall off and lose consciousness, basically. It's really good to kind of put in some water that they drink. So they'll drink some water and they'll kind of get up that loose molasses. You can put it in feed too, but it's a little harder to guarantee that they're eating it, because the loose molasses will sometimes, it's dry, so it'll sometimes kind of flake to the bottom and they won't get it. So I like to put it in water just to make sure that it's disintegrated into the water, and so whatever water they have will have the minerals. That is the end of the halves list, and so we're going to end the first part of this series here. But before I let you go, I wanted to throw out a quick tip. If there are any instances where you have to take your animals to the vet, and yes, I have taken my sheep into my car and to the vet's office and brought them in through the door into the room that most people bring dogs into. I bring my sheep. And so there's been some instances where we've had to call the vet, and they usually give you some sort of bill or write-up of what sort of medicines that they gave you. And my tip is to keep all of those records together and go through the sort of medicine that they gave at the time that the animal was having that issue. And if you feel like that is something that might pop up again, maybe you order it on your own and give it instead of having to go to the vet. Going to the vet is very expensive. And so if you can kind of see what medicines they gave for any particular issue, you might be able to stock up on some of that stuff ahead of time. So if you face it again, you can go, oh, well, she gave him this much of this, and I can buy that at the store. I'm going to go and I'm just going to have it in case I come across that issue again. So that is one thing I didn't do for this list, is I didn't go through the vet visits that we've had this past year and look at the medicines that were given and sort of remember, oh yeah, they gave this for this. And is there any way that I could have done this instead of going to the vet? Because a lot of times you can. There are certain instances where you can't. I took one of our sheep in and they couldn't really find the problem, so they gave him a painkiller and like a few other things. And so like that instance, I was like, I probably wouldn't record that medicine, maybe the painkiller, but not the other stuff, because they were treating for stuff that was kind of a big question mark. But for the things that you're like, no, it was this and they gave this and I can buy it at the store and I can give it myself and I know what to look for now, I definitely recommend doing that, going through your lists, either haves, needs, or would like to haves, and maybe adding some of those items that maybe you went to a vet for and you are like, oh, actually I could have done this at home. I'm going to just sneak in that in my list to have it on hand for this year in case we come across that issue again. I know this list is a lot, so please don't be overwhelmed. This is stuff that we've collected over 3 years. Again, I mentioned some of the stuff that are must-haves, others that are you have to really decide on what you want to have for this lambing season. Some things I wish I had bought sooner and I didn't. Other things, even if I had bought sooner, I don't know if they would have helped. So you really have to kind of go weigh, how much can I afford versus what's the worst case scenario in my head and can I prep for that? Which for me is always a horrible thing to do because it always ends up being that horrible thing that happens that year. So I'm not doing that this year, but we definitely want to make sure that you're as prepped and ready for whatever can happen. All right, that wraps it up for part 1 of our lambing series. I know this video is getting a little bit long, so I wanted to make it sort of a quick goodbye. If you like this video, give it a good thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to make sure that you don't miss out on part 2 of our lambing prep series. You can follow us on social media at Ewe and Me Creamery. That's EWE for you. Ewe and Me Creamery on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you for watching, and I will see y'all in part 2 of our lambing prep series. Bye!